Alright, boys. We're finally heading into the load. Done that again. We're going to do another dungeon walkthrough here. Focusing on what Outlaw does. There's a lot of bullshit that happens in Motherlode, and Outlaw's really good at handling all of it. I will say, as you get to higher keys, especially on like fortified Motherlode, sometimes assassination proves to be a better damage profile, but they're much worse at handling all the little shit you have to do in Motherlode. So you make that call for yourself, what you want to play. Outlaw is still a great spec for this dungeon. I'm going to skip past this stuff. This is usually what's shrouded. All the mobs that are in here are also found later, though. So anything that I talk about in the later packs, you can use if you pull these mobs. So you notice there's one hired assassin over here. There's some vendors, mech jockey, a peacekeeper, and a thug. So keep that in mind. But shrouding past all this and coming up to this is the usual play. Now, we're going to talk about mech jockeys for a little bit here first. Each mech jockey in here has a peacekeeper that they will go to based on where the mech jockey is. You can manipulate that a little bit. And the most useful things for that are... Let me see if I have a belt that has knock on it. No, I don't have knock belt. So knock belt with engineering is useful for a few of the mech jockeys to push them towards other peacekeepers to make them like manipulate which one they go into. But DK Grip and Windwalker Monk Ring are both very good at that, along with Druid Typhoon, but Typhoon is a little bit more difficult to make work. So we'll talk about the mech jockeys and where they go first to get that done. This mech jockey goes to this peacekeeper when you tag him. This mech jockey goes to this peacekeeper. This mech jockey goes to this peacekeeper. Oftentimes this is one of the ones that you knock. You knock him into that one. This mech jockey also goes to this peacekeeper. This mech jockey comes here. This mech jockey comes here. This mech jockey goes nowhere. These two mech jockeys both go here. These two mech jockeys both go here. This one can be pushed into here, which you'll see happen a lot with ring and grip to put him closer to this. This mech jockey goes here. That's all your mech jockeys. And then this boy, based on where the pat is, this mech jockey will go here or here. You want to pull this in a way where he goes into this one, though. Like, that's the idea. You pull this when he's close to this, so one of the mech jockeys goes into this boy. Important to note, the reason that you see people do all the trash up front, the Peacekeeper is worth 12 count, which is 3 times what a mech jockey or an assassin or a vendor is worth. And if you tag the mech jockey before it goes into the Peacekeeper, you get the count for the mech jockey as well. So, killing a Peacekeeper is effectively 4 times the count for less than twice the health. So you kill as many Peacekeepers as you can. It's worth 4 times as much as the percent you need. It has less than double the health of any other mob. So that's why you see that. And then there's 2 other Peacekeepers that we'll talk about really quick, because count is important in here. The 2 padding Peacekeepers. It is important to note that there is a mech jockey inside them, worth 4 count in both this one that I marked with a moon and this one that I marked with an X. But you have to tag it like as it dies. So as both of those Peacekeepers die, there's 2 ways that you can do it. One, you just have Blade Flurry active, and Blade Flurry will 99% of the time get the tag. Or 2, if you run on Holy Decay, you will always get the tag. As long as there is a wound on this boy when he dies, the wound will pop and it'll tag the jockey for you with Bursting Source. So you can make these guys worth 16 count rather than 12. If you're ever short on count, that's probably why. And a good pack to not include in your route as like your fixer pack is this pack. These 3 boys, we like to not include this in our route, and if for whatever reason we scuff a tag on one of the mech jockeys, we can pull this in with like a Reaping Wave or another pack that we're doing. These 3 mobs, and that fixes your count. So let's talk about what these boys actually do. The off-duty laborers will cast one spell one time, and then they'll just melee the tank. So when they're engaged, they cast Throw Wrench at their aggro target. And if you're out of line of sight when Throw Wrench goes off, or when the cast finishes, you're out of line of sight, they'll just never cast Throw Wrench. And Throw Wrench hurts a lot. So a lot of times you'll Shroud in here, the tank will Speed Pot, and he'll tag this, and maybe he tags this over here with the Assassin pack. And comes in here, ducks in the corner, so he dodges all the Throw Wrenches, and then all the Laborers come in, and then they just melee the tank after that. Assassins are where I think Outlaw shines the most. And we'll pull these packs in a little bit here. Actually, let's pull this Assassin pack. Assassins, I think, is where Outlaw shines the most. They have a 15-second cooldown cast, or 15-second cooldown on Toxic Blade, which needs a kick, and a 12-second cooldown on Hail of Flechettes, which needs a disrupt. So, Toxic Blade we kick. It's tank damage that you don't want happening. And then Hail of Flechettes, you hit him with the gouge. You can also use blind. You can use stun. But basically, anytime there's an assassin in a pack, I walk up, I'll mark one, and I'll be like, I got this guy. And now I'm handling him 100% of the time forever. The mech jockey, if you're fighting a mech jockey, it's not in a peacekeeper, which there's only one or two that I recommend doing that. They will cast Grease Gun, which just hits boys in melee for a bunch of damage. And there's nothing you really do about it. So mech jockeys don't really have a mechanic. They have the little grenade they put on the ground too, which you can kick if you have a free kick, but Motherlode is a dungeon that you don't really have many free kicks. I don't know why he's not casting it, but it has a cast time, but you can also just dodge it. So wasting a kick on a mech jockey is almost never the play. And the only time it's the play is just you just have a kick that you're not going to use on this pack at all for whatever reason, which is very rarely the case in Motherlode. Then you can kick the concussion charge. Next, we have Thugs, which just melee, and then they... Actually, I'm going to stun him so he doesn't go in. I don't want to deal with those boys yet. So he does Inhale Vapors. That's a 25-second cooldown. So a range can handle that. If you're running with a hunter or a mage and you don't need their kick for other shit, you can just set them on the thug. There's a concussion charge. And they can get the inhaled vapors every time. The inhaled vapors is just tank damage and then also damage via the charge. When they target a random person and just charge them. So any free kicks that aren't being spent on assassins or refreshment vendors, which we'll talk about in a second, should always be going into thugs to reduce damage taken. Now, vendors have two casts. They have Ice Spritzer, which does damage while it channels, and if it finishes the channel, it stuns whoever it was channeling. And then they cast Coca-Cola Refreshment, or whatever the hell it's called. Both are actually really important to interrupt. I see a lot of people just ignore the Coca-Cola. And if you if it hits a Coca-Cola on one of the Peacekeepers, it slows you down so much because it's a heal. And the heal is based on max health, so it heals these boys a shitload. But you can be using kick, gouge, stun, whatever. You just need to make sure vendors do not get any casts off. And Outlaw is very good at that too. So if there's not a assassin in the pack, you can handle a vendor pretty much solo. It's important to note also that, like this, we're going to stun this one. It's important to note also that if the Ice Spritzer is on you, you can banish it off or cloak it. And the cast will just basically get interrupted. We vanish that one off, we cloak the first one. And now we have kick available for the Coca-Cola. But usually in a pack that has an assassin and vendor in it, as Outlaw, it's much easier for you to just take over the assassin and then let everybody in combination handle who's doing what on the vendor. And then you can throw stuns at the vendor too, and you can... Obviously the vanish and the cloak are helpful as well. Something to note also that I kind of did but didn't mention. If you stun or disrupt the mech jockey while he's trying to get into the Peacekeeper, he will not go into that Peacekeeper then. And you do not want that to happen. So I'm going to stun one of these. I'm going to kill this boy. And then we'll talk about what the Peacekeeper does here. So Peacekeeper has 3 abilities. Charge Claw. This is a frontal. It's a frontal cleave. So it cleaves, hits target, and it hits people in front of him. Or nearby him. So make sure you're behind these and not close to the tank. Energy Shield just makes it so you have to attack him from behind, or he blocks your damage. So positioning is very important. And this also, like, Outlaw has an advantage there too, because of acrobatic strikes, you can be very liberal with your positioning. And then they put this pool of bullshit on the ground, which he's not doing. The bullshit disrupts you, and again, that's just positioning. Like any pull with a Peacekeeper, positioning is king. You want to be very aware of where you're standing to avoid Charge Claw, to get good damage through the energy shield, and also to not get hit by the pool. He's not casting, maybe he doesn't cast a pool on normal. But if you've ever been in this dungeon, you know what I'm talking about. It's a giant orange bullshit on the ground. It takes a second or two to spawn. See, in this jockey? So I mean when I say they take damage, they take damage from AoE effects while they're inside the Peacekeeper. So in any sort of actual pull that you're not solo fighting a Peacekeeper, the jockey will be dead by the end. And that's how you get the tag on him. As for that, that's all the mobs here. It's just different combinations of what you pull. There's some packs that are like really good packs to do with reaping because you can't really go too big. So, like the double assassin pack. This is a good pack to do with reaping because when there's 2 assassins in the group, it's hard to pull other shit because you need so many stops to keep the flechettes and the toxic blades from going off. Whereas thugs, it's much less impact. If a vapors goes off, you're not in that bad a spot, right? So a lot of times you'll do a pull that's like a lot of thugs with a couple Peacekeepers over here. And then you'll reap, and then you'll turn around and pull like this 3-pack. But yeah, the important things to note, like there's not really too much to say. This dungeon's just a grind through a lot of the same mobs forever. Important to make sure that you're getting tags on jockeys before they go in. So if you don't tag them first, you don't get the count either. You have to tag them when they go in. And then on the ones that don't have jockeys go in, X and Moon that I marked earlier, the Pat over there, and X before the boss, you want to make sure you tag them on the way out. This mech jockey, make sure you move over to Moon with some sort of knock. NG Belt's really good. I wish I had NG Belt on, but basically you hit him with the distract so you can get in here, and then you boop hit NG Belt from here, from stealth, and it'll knock him over there. If you do it late, it has to be from out of combat that you do it. Because if they're already in combat, they basically, as soon as they enter combat, they pick their mech that they're going into. So they have to be displaced before they enter combat, or as they enter combat, in order to go into the right boy. So let's kill this boy, and then we'll talk about the first boss here. First boss is not the best outlaw boss, but we are pretty effective at it for a couple reasons. Am I gonna die to this pack? Yo, lay off me, bro. One, our mobility is really good, so we can help with the bombs that happen here. When he puts the foot bombs out, it's really easy to help out because of sprint and the boy. 2, we're rogues, so we can feint every one of the static pulses. The big knockback, that's like the most threatening part of the fight, is that damage. We can feint the initial hit. We can cloak 1 too. And 2, the way the phases work give us time, like in the down phases. So after the bombs go out and you kick the bombs in, the boss has a big damage taken debuff. And during that time, you don't want to be re-rolling, right? You want to do your re-rolling outside of the phase. So what I like to do is, say I have a good buff. Say I have crit Sinister Strike or some shit. And his damage taken debuff fades. Basically, you're looking at the duration of your buff. And if that buff isn't going to last through the next phase, I roll off it already and start looking for my next good buff to have for the duration, the full duration of his nuke phase. So we'll lust this for fun. Static Pulse is a frontal you just dodge. Or not Static Pulse, Shocking Claw. But this is what you can feint every time and take very little damage. We gotta run around and get bombs while we're tanking the boss. There's the frontal I was talking about.
Blazing as right.
A little behind the back shot. So now here, even though I have CDR, I'm not gonna roll off this because he's taking 150% increased damage. Ideally, I go into this phase with a good buff. So like now, the buff's gone off him, I'm gonna start rolling. The fuck? Get in. Alright. I don't know how I misclicked on that. I'm thinking too much about my life. And I'm tanking the boss. I'm trying not to die. End kick bombs in. I hate everything. The moral of the story is make your healer do it. Make sure you have big damage for the phase. Hello? I hit him with the behind the back? Yup. Can't get that one though. Too slow by myself. Fuck. Alright. You get the gist. Don't stand in the frontal. You can also bait the frontal. It'll always target melee. So when Shocking Claw is about to come out, make sure you're standing in front of the boss. So that it goes towards the wall, and then your range can do whatever they want. That's a big help. Now these packs, there's 3 mobs in these packs. The Wonton Sappers do nothing. Who cares? They do Final Blast when they die. You move out of that. Mine Rats, important to note, they will throw rock at whoever the closest target is, regardless of threat. So when like your tank's setting up this pull, a lot of rogues I see, and this I used to do, I got punished by this a lot until I stopped and like taught myself. I would come to like the center here and get ready for the pull to come together. But as the tank pulled, I would be the closest to these 2 Mine Rats. I get pulled out of stealth, and I just get whopped on the pull by a bunch of throw rocks. So you want to position in a way where you get to access the pack quickly. So like over here is a good place to start, but you're never closest to the Mine Rats. And Acrobatic Strikes helps with that a lot too. And then we have Earthshapers who cast... that's all the Mine Rats do. And they also have half the health, so they die pretty quickly. Not a bad idea to focus them down if you have enough interrupts for your Earthshapers. So Earthshapers cast Earth Shield and Rock Lance. Rock Lance owns the tank. Need to have an interrupt on that every time. And Earth Shield's definitely worth interrupting if you can. You can use Gouge for both of these things. You can use Stun for both of these things. You can use whatever you want. Because the casts are really long, so you get the benefit as long as... You don't need to kick is kind of what I'm saying. You can kick, Stun, Gouge, Blind, Knock, whatever you want to do. So usually what we'll do is I'll mark 1 and pick for myself. And then depending on if we have them all covered, if we don't have them all covered, you can like grab another one too. So say I'll have Moon and X, and then I'll set Moon to my focus and get the kick on that, and then handle X just by focusing it and getting stuns and gouges. And usually in this situation, that means I'm gonna let Earth Shields go off, which is okay. Because you can torrent them off as well if you are Horde side. Or you have some sort of purge in your group. There's ways to deal with it. It's just much easier to disrupt the cast so you don't have to. But that's how you can handle 2. And Rogue is very good at that just because we have so many tools at our disposal for disrupts. Oh, and the Sappers have this that you have to dodge. It's just a bunch of bullshit that's in the way. Like here, I got the stun on my target, and I got the kick on my focus target. As for the other mobs, Extractors, I don't recommend pulling ever. They have so much health. They have the same health as a Peacekeeper, but they're worth half the count. So you don't really want to fight Extractors. Actually, they have more health than the Peacekeeper because the Driller that comes out, and the Driller is not worth any count. This may change. I haven't dug into the changes in count on PTR yet, but this may change with 8.2. But for right now, don't pull Extractors. They're a waste. I know people get bored of pulling all the shit at the front, and it is lame, and the dungeon design sucks, but it's just not efficient to pull them. But they do a frontal if you do pull them. And then the drillers that come out do a... What's it called? They grease cut as well, like the mech jockeys from previously. Shell biters just spit and do damage, and then Stone Furies put a shield on them, which prevents them from being interrupted if they have the shield out, which means you cannot interrupt their next cast. which is the big AoE damage boy, Furious Quake. But you can just gouge Quake even if they have the shield up. So those guys are whatever. These guys aren't the most efficient count, but they're easy. And they're efficient enough, I'd say. Often you'll skip this, though. And if you don't skip this, you find ways to pull it with the boss. There's a trick where you can pull the Stone Fury in to the boss, but it's very precise, and it's something the melee will never be doing. Like, you'll never be coming out here. You basically have to pull it from, like, up here. And then stand here so it follows you up this hill and doesn't pull this pack. And then comes in. This pack is all stuff we've seen except for the Taskmaster. Taskmaster is a lot to do with tank positioning. When he casts cover, you want the tank to move the mobs away from him. And that's pretty much it. You don't want to attack him while he has cover up. You want to hit the other shit. This boss is a pretty good outlaw boss. There's a little trick that you can do that I like to do the second fixate. So first fixate I just let have on me because you have defensives up. Parry works on the Earth Rager melees. So when they melee you, the Earth Ragers will fixate a random person. And when they melee the person they're fixated on, they get a stacking debuff. The debuff is a bleed, so you cannot cloak it off, but you can parry it. And if for some reason you don't like having friends and you play Alliance, you can Stoneform it off with either of the dwarf races. So you could really get in there if you're dwarf or Dark Iron. You parry for first 10 seconds, so you wait to have like 4 stacks of the buff and then dwarf it off, and then you can start kiting around. But usually ideal way to do this is you're going to have your team kite these boys into the boss, basically, so they're always sitting on top of the boss, and then you run around the room as a unit, so nobody gets hit, but you're still able to AoE. An Outlaw with Acrobatic Strikes, again, is extremely good for that. You gain boss damage from Blade Flurrying, you do good damage to Earth Ragers, and if you don't have an AoE stun or disrupt for the pulses, the Resonant Pulse, which is the same thing that the Furious Quake that the Shellbiters do, that's what this guy hits Resonant Pulse, and then it makes these guys cast a Furious Quake, and you need an interrupt for him. But Gouge works, Blind works, even when, and those two also work when they're empowered. So he'll empower an Earth Rager throughout the fight, and that makes it so you can't stun the Earth Rager then, but you still can incapacitate it. So Gouge and Blind still work once they're empowered. Other than that, this dude's just a meat boy. And then the little trick is, let's see if I can the fight lasts long enough for me to show you. This is bad. I just gotta run away and let them quake. Because I do not have a way to stop all of them. See how I vanished that off? Reset the boss, but if you vanish, we're not gonna kill him again. If you vanish during the cast of Raging Gaze when they refixate, it'll pick somebody else. So I won't do it on the opener usually because I can still get in there and plow. But on their first refixate after the first pulse, I think it is worth for Outlaw to vanish that off so that they can clean up. Like, we're really a really good class at cleaning up the remaining ads so that the rest of your group doesn't have to kite anymore. So us not having a fixate during the second round, I think is very good actually. So keep that in mind and try to game it so you don't get it. If you're running down here without taking the cart, please be careful. I'll put some markers down. This boy and this boy can still hit you even if you're on the tracks. So you have to hug like the side away from them. But you can get down without the cart. And it's faster than taking the cart. It's a little min-maxy, but it's faster. Everything in here, you're probably not pulling. We'll talk about them briefly if you are pulling. Masterminds, there's nothing you can do to stop anything that they do. These are the big scary boys that you want to pull as few of as possible. They also see stealth, which is kind of fucking annoying. Do they not see stealth on normal? What the hell? Weird. Oh wait, I'm not in stealth. That's why I don't see that they see stealth. They do see stealth. So they cast Energy Lash on the tank and it owns them, and then they cast Leech Globule that does damage to everybody and heals them. They have a shitload of health. They're not worth enough count, and they own. So you don't want to be pulling those. Then the other mobs you have in here are the test subjects, which just gain, they're the little rats. The longer they're alive, the more damage their melees do, so you need to kill them fast. They do like a little leap around like the Saurids in a Taldazar. But they die pretty quickly, and they're not bad count, actually, for how much health they have. So if you are doing a pack in here, you probably want to involve a bunch of test subjects, and then like some alchemists is the best thing to do, or maybe some assistants. Assistants are worth 1 more count than the alchemist, for whatever reason. They're worth 5, and the alchemists are worth 4. Right? Do I have that backwards, or no? I think I have that right. Yeah, assistants. Oh, the alchemists and assistants are both worth 5. It's the testers that are worth 4. Okay. So anyways, the assistants cast Blowtorch and Transfig. Gouge the Blowtorch, kick the Transfig. Pretty much when you're walking into this, you're picking an assistant if you're pulling these, and you're handling an assistant. Blowtorch owns the tank, but you can gouge it. And the Transfig, or Transformation, whatever it's called, make them into a scarier mob and heal them to full. So you cannot let those go off. You can also, if for whatever reason you don't have enough kicks, you can let the Blowtorch go off and just hope your tank lives, and then you can handle the Transmorph on 2 assistants, or you can use AoE stuns on the Transmorphs. But they don't always line up, so it's a little bit risky to use an AoE stun on that. As for weapon testers, they cast Force Cannon, which is he turns around, picks somebody, and does a big-ass frontal knockback that does a lot of damage. So interrupt that. Best to not let it go off. Stun is a good way to handle that. Just have to be coordinating with your group. Outlaw can handle like 3 or 4 of the casts by themselves in the pack, and then you just have to use your AoE stuns or your knocks or your other incaps or whatever else everybody else has in your group to handle that. And then the alchemists, the only threatening thing the alchemists do is the make you a goo. I guess Caustic Combat is kind of threatening, but this is just dispellable. It's just a magic boy that your boy dispels. And the transmute's also a dispel. So alchemists can kind of be ignored. As long as there's not too many alchemists in the group, so the healer has enough dispels to handle you being polymorphed, you're chilling. Now, as for a skip in here, you got to guide your druid with some saps. So the druid will come around here, you'll sap this. You'll sap a test subject so we can walk through here. And if you're not running a druid, I guess you're just going through by yourself and getting a res on the other side or something. You have to figure out how you're doing the death skip. And then you get to here. Usually hang out up on this boy. And then tank comes, pulls everything to there. Yoink. I'm just going to speed pot, jump, vanish. Actually, I'm not going to vanish. We're going to fight these. Because I want to use vanish on the old boss arena. As you can see, this pack fucking owns. And I don't want to use Vanish or Cloak on it because I want it for the boss. But anyways, you just have to solve with your group comp how you're getting through. Usually the Rogue and the Druid come over to that spot I just showed you. They hang out, the tank pulls the shit away, and the Rogue and the Druid run through. Whoever else can stealth. Now, Rixa, this is actually one of my favorite bosses in the game. I think she's designed well. She has like one RNG aspect, and then everything else is scripted and controllable. So, the RNG is which pipe is going to spit bullshit. And the controllable stuff is everything else. She cycles. She'll do the blast where she puts the bullshit on the ground. She'll target a random person and point it towards them. So what you do is you have everybody just stand around the edges. So like if the boss is at yellow, everybody else will just stand on orange. And it'll shoot it into the water, and then you have like no shit on the ground. And then she'll put the chemical burn out, and then she'll spit again, and then she'll chemical burn, and then she'll clear her spit with the propellant blast. And it cycles like that every time. And the way chemical burn works, and Outlaw is very good at handling chemical burn, she will target the 2 closest players in succession with chemical burn, which is a big magic damage debuff. Can be dispelled. But on high keys, it's important that only one goes out. So you want to be cycling through all the classes that can handle getting one and be fine. So that one of them doesn't exist, and then the next one gets dispelled. every time she does it. So if you're playing with a warrior tank, the warrior can spell reflect every other one. So one set of them, one set of two, the warrior spell reflects, the other one gets dispelled. The next set, you have somebody else handle plus a dispel. The next set, spell reflect plus a dispel. The next set, somebody else plus a dispel. And often that can be the Outlaw Rogue and the warrior indefinitely, depending on what your roles are. We can handle it with Vanish and Cloak. The Vanish is a little difficult, and I might fuck this up because I have not played in a week or so. So my reaction times might be gone, boys. But anyways, you have like a half second to vanish. You have to vanish in the chemical burn cast. So you want to be watching your cast bar. As soon as the cast starts, you vanish. And you have to make sure you're the closest to the boss too. So she'll always target the closest person to the boss and then the second closest. So if your team fucks up and somebody else is closer than them, you flame them. Don't let them flame you for not handling it. And remind them not to be on top of the boss. So you want to be standing like right on top of the boss when it's your turn to vanish one off. So let's see if we got this, dude. So she's gonna spray. And then she's gonna chemical burn here. And we got the vanish. Nice. And I guess when there's one person, she only targets one person. So you see how the debuff didn't go out? I'm gonna let the next one go off and cloak after. You can also pre-cloak. So you can cloak it off, or you can pre-cloak. Yeah, she only casts one when there's one person in the group. Then Propellant Blast, she targets somebody random. She does this for 2 people. She just sets a 2 all the time. She sprays, then 2 chemical burns, then spray, then 2 chemical burns, then 2 Propellant Blasts. Then spray, then 2 chemical burn, then spray, then 2 chemical... It's just over and over and over again. That's why I think this fight is good. If it weren't for the fact that her auto attacks do magic damage, I think this fight would be great. Now you can see I don't have Vanish back up for this one, so I won't be able to handle it. But if there were a warrior here, he would be handling every other one with me, and I would have Vanish back up. So effectively, I could get 3 in a row. And sometimes if you get a double buff with True Bearing in it, you can end up handling like 4 or 5 in a row because you can do warrior, then you with Vanish, then warrior, then you with Vanish again, then warrior, then you with Vanish again, and by that time your True Bearing is probably gone. So then warrior, then you with Cloak, then warrior, then you with Cloak. You know what I mean? So you could just like, you end up getting them almost indefinitely, depending on your roles are. I wouldn't keep CDR here. This is a situation where I would keep single CDR to try to help, because other classes can handle it as well. Like a Demon Hunter can just take it with Blur and not worry about being dispelled because they have big DR. Monk can take it with Diffuse. Mage can ice block it. Death Knight can pre-AMS and not get the debuff. I don't know what other classes do. Hunter can turtle it. Maybe Hunter can turtle it. Hunter hitting it with the Feign is like too much because Feign has like a little delay compared to Vanish. Vanish is instant, whereas Feign has a little delay. So I'd be surprised if Hunter can handle it with Feign Death. Now here, if you get a good pat and you have 2 shrouds, you can actually get in here without dying. And I will show you how. So you'd be shrouding up here, blah, 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 blah. Your team is with you. You're all invisible, blah, blah, blah. We did not get a good pat. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here. Like so, with a speed pot. And then we don't have distract back. So this is where you need 2 rogues, because you need 2 shrouds and 2 distracts. You need the first distract, and your distract is never back up by now. But you can sneak by this boy with distract. Got them all. Be-do-do-do. And we're in. So you don't have to die if you have double rogue. You can also like get your druid in by doing this. You see what I'm saying? Even if you get a bad pat, you can't utilize the shroud or whatever. You can wait, you get your druid in. Without dying. But usually the tank will just pull these boys away. And then you guys run in anyway, and the druid doesn't have to die, and that's that. Mogul Raz Dunk. There's nothing crazy that Outlaw does here, other than... Oh shit, Daddy's home, baby. He's gonna target me with these. So this always targets ranged, unless there's no ranged in the group. And I guess the microbots aren't on normal. That's nice. Gatling gun, you just dodge. Outlaw's good because we have good mobility, and we also have the longer melee range. And if you end up with a bad combo, the microbot shots, you can just kind of stand in them and cloak, so that you don't get hit by the other young boy, the Gatling gun. These are bigger than they look. Do not be close to those circles. The spawn, the animation is smaller than the actual radius of that thing. I'll show you something cool here. These mobs are just, you want to make it so the tank can get in the line of the Heartseeker. Usually you do that just by not moving around too much. Parry, face him, take no damage from it. So usually what I'll do is I'll feint 2 and I'll parry another during this to reduce the damage I take here. I don't know why parry works. It doesn't really make sense that it works, but it does. Oh man, I got the feint late. Other than that, this fight is just dodge shit and hit the boy. It's a much more difficult fight for ranged. Melee doesn't really have too much going on. You kind of just stand on the boss. And keep an eye out for, like, as melee, it's really helpful if you can keep an eye out for where the young boys go, so you can figure out where the safe spots are. There will always be 2 safe spots because of how the crossfires work. Because they'll target 1 row and 1 column. So some people like to use markers. There's also a, like, big safe spot. I'll show you in a sec. So some people will put markers down to call, like, the 6 quadrants. And 2 of these will always be safe. But then there's also a spot, and I don't use this spot. I don't actually like this spot. I think it makes the fight a little bit harder than just doing it correctly. But it's, like, right around here. The microbots will never land here. But you still have to dodge Gatling gun. So I think you actually make the fight harder by being over here on the safe spot and getting trapped. And having to take ticks of Gatling gun when if you just like pay attention and do the fight. And move the boss to where he's supposed to go and follow him and be in the right position. You take no damage at all. And you still dodge the microbots. And you don't take any of the Gatling gun damage. But you can utilize the spot. You'll always be safe from the microbots. But you won't be safe from the Gatling gun. So keep that in mind. Be careful. Dodge the Gatling gun accordingly. It's important to watch the timers of the 2 abilities there too. If you're using this spot. So you know if you have time to like dodge the Gatling gun and get back to the spot where the microbots are going to hit. Before. Because sometimes they overlap really shittily. Safety sharks have a bazillion health and give 0 count. Don't jump in and kill them. And that's Motherlode, dude. It's not a lot to talk about because it's a lot of the same mobs. We're not even going to talk about these mobs. We're not fighting them. All right, we'll talk about them briefly. Sometimes this pack only can be efficient afterwards. This pack only. The war machines are good count, but they pick somebody random and blast them. Expert technicians buff this guy and also try to heal him. So you want to kick their casts. Repairs the heal, kick that shit. Sky Scorchers are the boys that we just fought in the intermission of this boss. So they have the lines that you want your tank to be in, so they take the damage. But there is, I guess we didn't touch on this. A lot of times to avoid the last reaping, you'll leave like 1 or 2 counts short. And you go spawn a bomb. You get the tag on him. He hits you, you get the count. They're worth 1 count each. So you can kind of come down and just grab a couple bombs and make sure you get the tags. And then let him hit you to blow up. Like, you don't actually have to kill him. He can just hit you and blow up once you have the tag on him. And then you'll get the count for that. Oh, man. Alright, I guess we're killing this. So that is worth noting. Otherwise, everything in here is... There's one other mob in here. It's funny, I didn't even, like... I turned around and was like, oh shit, there's mobs there. I forgot. Because you just don't do them. This last pack is the exception. It's maybe worth. I still don't think it's worth. It is good count. It doesn't take very long to kill. But I just think there's so much other... It's not even that it's that bad. It's that so much other stuff is better. Oh, the specialists. They just drop bullshit on the ground. They look like they do nothing, but they're actually really fucking annoying, and I don't recommend pulling them ever. And that's it. I hope you guys like this. I hope it helps you out a little bit. If you have any questions, you think I missed something, something was unclear, feel free to ask me in the comments. And we got one dungeon left. We gotta do Siege. And we will be streaming WoW again soon. I gotta make my legend push in Hearthstone. I'm rank 2. I gotta just get legend for the season. And then we'll be back to playing WoW on stream instead of Hearthstone. But shout out to everybody who's been hanging out with me while I play Hearthstone. It means a lot to me. I know you found me because of WoW. So it's cool as fuck that you hang out during that. But anyways, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Follow me on twitch.tv/undadtv. And we got one more, and then we're gonna start doing some little tips and tricks things, like stuff that's not included in the walkthroughs. There's other little like Mythic Plus things that I've been thinking about that I want to make some little videos for. So keep an eye out for that, and I'll see you guys soon. All right, peace.